What's up YouTube, how's everyone doing today? This is Everything is Tech here, and in this video I have my personal MacBook Air 2011 buying guide. I know many people out here, who want to buy a MacBook Air, but you're not really sure which specs to go with and everything. And this video is what's going to kind of help you out get through that problem. I'm going to be going over, the different types of customizations you can do to the MacBook Air and what will actually suit your needs. As far as the changes that have been made to the new MacBook Airs, there's pretty much a few small changes, but they actually do make a big difference. There's one change that actually has new processor chips in the MacBook Airs, which is supposedly 2.5 times faster. There's also one Thunderbolt port, which actually gives faster transfer speeds, and it's actually an improved mini display port, I'd rather say. There's also backlit keyboard, which actually, as it says in the picture right over here, you actually get the light from the keys if you're in dark places by just clicking a button, so that's always wonderful to have. And the final thing is flash storage on all MacBook Airs. Flash storage, if you don't know what that really is, it's equivalent to a solid state drive pretty much, and you get faster transfer speeds as compared to regular hard drives. So you can transfer files from one place to another much faster than you could on a regular hard drive, I guess. And let's go ahead and look at the buying now options. Select the MacBook Air, and here are your 4 choices. You have two 11-inch choices and two 13-inch choices. This is where it really is the main dilemma, the screen sizes, and this is probably the most important part of buying a laptop, because if you're buying your MacBook Air as your main laptop, I would close my eyes and go with the 13-inch, because as a main laptop you want to have a decent screen size. My personal preference for when buying a laptop, I at least want a 15-inch laptop. I don't mind the 13-inch because 13 inches are pretty cool too, but when you go to 11-inch, that's really, in my opinion, pushing it, because that's 4 inches less than what I really want. 13-inch, again, is not too bad, and in my opinion, I don't go with 17 inches because that's a little too big. I don't really, see, spending that, so much money in an extra 2 inches, especially when I'm not really going to be using my laptop as much. I'm only going to be using when I'm, outside of my house, or, if I'm on vacation. So if you're buying your MacBook Air as your primary laptop or your primary machine, definitely go with the 13-inch. It will definitely pay off. Now, if you're just buying, your MacBook Air as a secondary laptop or as another computer that's just going to be on the side there, then you can kind of think about going with 11-inch. And even if, your laptop is a secondary, machine, you're not going to be using it that often, I think 11-inch would probably be most ideal if you don't mind the small screen size. Now, depending on what screen size you want to go with, that will definitely make the difference. Now, just looking at the lowest end 11-inch and lowest end 13-inch, there's a $300 price difference for the extra 2 inches of screen size that you're going to be getting, the extra 2 gigs of RAM, and the double the flash storage. So is that really worth spending $300 for the extra 2 inches and the extra specs? That really depends just on you. When you make your decision for what screen you want to go, this is how you're really going to start off. And if you started off with the 11-inch 64GB, the lowest end MacBook Air, this is probably going to be the best choice if you're just doing, day-to-day tasks. You don't need that much power. You don't need that much multitasking. You just want to do, some Skype, some Uvu, iChat, video chatting, watch YouTube videos, watch some Flash content, browse the web, check your mail, do some really light photo editing. This 11-inch would be the best choice for you. Although, it has 64 gigs of storage, if you really don't mind buying an external drive for the extra $100, $150, you can always transfer all the files. If you start to run low on your storage for the 11-inch, you can always just transfer some files to your external drive and you'll be good to go. So, the 11-inch, I think this would be ideal. The lowest end 11-inch would be the best choice for this day-to-day task. If you're going to be doing a little bit more multitasking, I think 4 gigs of RAM is definitely needed. I personally always get at least 4 gigs of RAM with a laptop because, for what I do on a laptop, I need at least 4 gigs of RAM. Of course, 8 is always good to have, but you don't have 8 gigabyte options, which I do kind of, regret. It'd be awesome if Apple added at least 8 gigs of RAM. That would be super. But 4 gigs of RAM, I think that definitely, cut you down. I mean, that won't cut you down. That'll actually allow you to do more multitasking, do a little bit more in photo editing, as far as speed goes. So, if you want to do a little bit more multitasking, more than just browsing the web, you want to be able to have at least 2-3 windows of Safari up. You want to be doing some photo editing a little bit faster. The 4 gigs of RAM for the extra $100, I think, is definitely worth the money. Now, if you're going to be buying your MacBook Air as a primary laptop, this super drive is definitely necessary. If you don't mind being able to just install your software through USB, then I don't think you really need this. But this is going to be your primary laptop, the Super Drive is definitely necessary. Display, if you want a display, you can always buy Apple's for the extra $1,000. But for those people who want to be a little thrifty, you also just pick up the run-of-the-mill display for $250 and just get a mini DVI to HDMI cable, and you'll be set for a display for less than $200, $300. Keyboard, that depends just on you, whatever kind of keyboard you want. Ethernet adapter, this I think is really necessary if you're going to be taking your laptop around, because most places the Wi-Fi isn't the best. And when you have the USB Ethernet or Ethernet adapter, this plugs into your USB cable, and you can pretty much attach an Ethernet cable so you have faster speeds on internet. That is definitely necessary. The Apple Care Protection Plan, this I think would be a definite thumbs up, because for all the people who drop their MacBook Airs or really you have problems with, Apple covers all this with free of charge if you buy if you buy the Apple Care. I know many other companies like HP or Dell, you have to buy the warranty. Something happens to your computer and you have to spend more money because they don't cover it. That's not the case with Apple. I'm talking from personal experience. My iPod Touch has broken down so many times. Whenever I've had a problem with my MacBook Pro, in which I'm recording my video on right now, the Apple Care comes good and used. One-to-one, this is definitely your choice. You go to an Apple retail store and they show you how to use your Mac. That is not for the cool people who know how to use a computer. Just kidding. But the one-to-one, I think, if you want to get a head start on your Mac, you want to know how to use it, the one-to-one would be the great choice. But most people just like to play around with their Mac and they get used to the interface and everything. And these are all the ports. These are the different types of ports you probably want to buy if you're going to be, connecting your MacBook Air or your MacBook Air to a display or, a TV. External Thunderbolt storage, I think if you want to spend the extra $1,000, this would always be great because you have faster transfer speeds and you have like 4 terabytes of space, so you can definitely never go wrong. Printer, these are like some different printers you can go with, 3 different printers. You actually have a promotion from Apple for printers. So if we just go ahead and get rid of the Thunderbolt storage, and I think that's pretty much it. And I'm gonna keep the Apple Care and the Ethernet adapter because I always use those. And this is gonna be what you're looking at for 4 gigs of RAM and everything, $1,300. Which, I mean, that's not that bad, but why wouldn't you just go with the 13-inch if you want to buy your MacBook Air as a like a primary laptop? Let's go ahead and take a look at the 11-inch 120 gigabyte version. This is probably going to be the sweet spot for the 11 inches. You can always add an i7. Now, this is going to be a really big question for many people. Why should you get an i7? If you're going to be doing photo editing on your 11-inch, which I wouldn't recommend because of the screen size. If you don't mind the screen size, this is definitely not going to concern you. But if you're going to be doing photo editing or video editing, at least you want to get some decent amount of speed through that. The i7 would be ideal. If you're just going to be, browsing the web and everything like that, you really don't need the i7. That's way too much power, and that's really going to go to waste if you're not going to be using it. Now, if you're going to be doing, again, light photo editing or even video editing, I would go with the i7. I think the extra $150 will definitely pay off. Extra space, 256 gigabytes is, that's a lot of space. Are you really going to be using that much space? That's really what you have to ask yourself if you're willing to spend the $300. Again, Super Drive, if this is going to be your primary laptop, you should definitely go with it. And then Apple Care, I would recommend it. Apple does a great job of covering your devices, and that is my personal opinion. If you don't want to go with it, you don't have to. And then these are all the cables. So, in my opinion, I really wouldn't need to customize the 11-inch. I would just go with, everything that the 11-inch offers. This great stuff. $1,200 is not bad for, 4 gigs of RAM, 120 gigs of space, and 1.6 gigahertz of i5. Of course, if you want to spend the $150 for the customization for the i7, that's always a thumbs up. For most people, I think, the lowest end 13-inch will be sufficient enough because the extra, the higher end 13-inch, the only difference that actually has is the extra space. That space is kind of doubled, and that is it. The specs are pretty much the same. The graphics and everything is the same. The only difference is the extra 256 gigabytes of flash storage. And honestly, is that really worth the money? Because, you could always just buy external drive for like half the price, even less than half the price. And whenever, you fall low on space, just transfer that stuff to the external drive, and you're good to go. So, I mean, if you're just going to be doing a little bit more tasks on your MacBook Air, you'll be doing photo editing, video editing, browsing the web, watching movies, and you want a 13-inch display, this lowest end would be the best choice. I will not stress that enough. This is probably, in my opinion, the 13-inch, the lowest end 13-inch will be my personal choice. No upgrades and everything. 13-inch would be my choice if I wanted to go ahead and buy a MacBook Air, because it just has the right specs, 1.7 gigabytes, 1.7 gigahertz, i5, that's perfect. 4 gigs of RAM comes with the lowest end 13-inch, awesome. Ethernet adapter, I would always go with that if I'm going to be traveling a lot. Apple Care, I would always go with the Apple Care. Apple does a great job covering the device. And Thunderbolt cable, if you have an iMac or if you have another display that has a Thunderbolt, such as the Cinema display, you would need the Thunderbolt. And if you want to buy a printer, that's on your own decision. Now, the highest end 13-inch, the only difference is the extra storage, and you can actually customize the highest end to the i7. Now, for those who want the extra space and want to go ahead with i7s, I don't think I mentioned earlier in the video, if you really don't need all that power, if you're only going to be doing browsing the web, nothing too complicated, nothing too processor intense. Processor intense stuff is really like video editing, photo editing. If you're not even going to be doing video or photo editing, you're not going to be touching that. If you're just going to be doing iPhoto editing, then you don't even need the i7. The i5 is sufficient enough. But again, if you're gonna go in a little bit more depth in for video editing and photo editing, a little more complicated stuff, then the i7 is definitely gonna be something you're gonna want to have. Super drive, again, if the 13-inch is gonna be your primary machine, you're gonna definitely want to get the super drive. Display, it's all up to you, and I've already gone through all the cables and everything. So $1,700 for the i7 1.8 gigahertz, and that's the only thing I've added. So is $1,700 really worth it for the extra space and the i7? That is up to you. Really quick rundown of what MacBook Air to buy. The lowest end 11-inch would be best if you want to just do basic day-to-day tasks. If you're not going to be using that much power, the 11-inch would be the lowest end 11-inch would be the best. If you're fine with the 64 gigs of RAM, not the 64 gigs of RAM, you're fine with the 64 gig of flash storage, and you just want a little bit more memory so you can do a little bit more multitasking, going ahead with the lowest end 11-inch, just adding the extra 4 gigs of RAM for the extra $100, that is always going to be worth it, and for the extra $100, I think it's definitely worthwhile. If you want a little bit more space, to double the space from the lowest end 11-inch, you're going to be using a lot of your laptop for, music storage, photo storage, then, the 11-inch would be ideal. The highest end 11-inch would be the best choice, especially because it comes with the 4 gigs of RAM and the double the hard drive space. The lowest end 13-inch would be my personal choice without any upgrades, except for of course, the Apple warranty. 13-inch lowest end would be perfect because it does, just decent amount of photo and video editing, has a good 4 gigs of RAM, and 128 gigabyte hard drive is pretty good, and it has a 13-inch display. So 13-inch lowest end 13-inch MacBook Air is perfect. The 13-inch 256 gigabyte, the highest end, is going to be the choice. If you want the extra space, if you're out on vacation and you're not going to be coming back home for a while, and you're going to be taking a lot of photos and videos, then it's also good to have that 256 gigabytes of hard drive space, so you can store your photos without worrying of it running out. And of course, you can actually also upgrade to i7s with the MacBook Airs, the highest end 13-inch. So, if you want a little bit more, faster processing speed, the 13-inch would be the best choice, the highest end, of course. And I hope this makes, you comfortable on buying your machine. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a message or leave me a comment. And if this video helped you out, please subscribe and like it. It really helps me out. Thanks for watching, and good luck on your purchase. Peace out.